Representative Linda Joy Sullivan recently announced her candidacy for the office of State Auditor, putting her into a primary competition with the incumbent office holder, Douglas Hoffer. Sullivan has represented the legislative district that includes Dorset, Danby, Peru, Landgrove, and Mount Tabor in the State House since 2017 and is currently serving in her second term as their representative. Hoffer has been the state auditor since 2013. We had the chance to discuss her candidacy and her reasons for throwing her hat into the ring for the auditor position with Representative Sullivan via an online conversation.
First of all, thank you, Representative Sullivan, for being with us today. I guess the obvious place to start is, why are you running for the state auditor position? What prompted that decision rather than stay on in the state legislature?
So I think that, and first, thank you for having me. The key is that I was in the legislature for, almost 4 years, and I learned a lot there, and it was a great experience. But when it boiled down to where can my skill set actually be best used because of my background, I looked at my skill set and said, I am an auditor. And I have been pretty much looking over what's going on in the state, the various branches of the government, and I thought, this is where I really belong. I believe I can bring value, a wealth of experience, and I do believe that the state auditor's office, in this time specifically, needs somebody who understands how to be a financial auditor.
And just kind of briefly, what is the role of the state auditor? What is the main job or jobs that that position requires of the office holder?
So the state auditor's office actually has two basic jobs. The first one actually is to take care and oversee the state's key financial statements. Those are the audited ones each year. Those actually ensure accurately what reality is. That's the intent. It's just like any public company, which needs to get its annual report audited each year and to let its owners know that it's actually telling the truth about the condition of the company. It's very important that the state auditor's office understands the need for not materially misstating these audits. That work is normally farmed out by the state auditor's office to an external independent auditor. But the state auditor himself or herself should actually be the one that oversees that work. So there's a great need for financial auditing experience to be able to make sure that this is going to accurately reflect what's going on. The other part of the auditor's job is where I believe that it actually gets a bit exciting. That's my family in the background. So the actual second part of the auditor's job is where I believe it really gets interesting. That part of the auditor's job calls upon the auditor to be the real watchdog or the sheriff, per se. That's where the sheriff comes in or the watchdog comes in and actually says, what can I do for Vermonters? So how can I tell the people of Vermont that I am actually looking out for them in an independent fashion? It calls for the state auditor to look over all of state government and to actually decide where things are not working the way they should. The Vermont law actually gives the authority to the state auditor to have the responsibility of identifying and calling out waste, fraud, and abuse. And those functions are there specifically to serve the people of Vermont. So we need to make sure, as in the state auditor's office, that they are serving the people and watching out for those tax dollars. It's a unique job. And I think that skills in those areas, extensive experience right now, particularly with what is going on financially in the world and in the state of Vermont, is crucial.
So you must feel then, I guess, that the incumbent office holder, Doug Hoffer, hasn't been as as vigilant or as active as he should have been, monitoring those things. Is that the case, or is there some other aspect to his performance since 2013, I believe, was when he came into office, that you feel you could do better at?
So I think that the key is not so much that one person would do better. I think the key is that one person would approach the office differently. In that, of course, I think that my skill set and my experience and my credentials and come in and would allow me to perform a job that is better focused on what Vermont needs right now, particularly when we're dealing with financial areas that need oversight. And remember that the auditor has the discretion to choose which audits they would like to perform. And so I would say, regarding the incumbent and myself, I would look to different areas of what to choose. So it's very difficult to turn around and say one person is going to be better than the other, especially when it's you who are saying, you know, of course I'm better. You know, but I do believe that our past experience in our business professions is something that says who will be able to deal with what Vermonters need right now in the best fashion for this specific position. I believe that this position is one of the most important positions that we have in state government. It's the oversight, it's the watchdog, and fraud, waste, and abuse could become very flagrant, you know, right now, specifically with all this, you know, pandemic money that's coming in. So, am I better? Of course.
Well, you anticipated my next question, which was how will the pandemic and COVID-19 impact the role of the auditor position? I mean, as you said, there's a lot of federal dollars, which I guess everyone is hoping anyway will arrive to help offset the economic fall off of the anticipated revenue that was going to be coming in. I mean, will there be an additional challenge to the position to monitor how those dollars are allocated and spent and hopefully used effectively and productively as they're intended?
I believe right now, sooner than later. In fact, I believe that there should have already been a plan in place to begin to look at what's going on because of COVID-19. I truly believe that the State Auditor's Office should have been front and center from day one. As soon as, you know, the issue came up and as soon as we started to see that this was truly an emergency situation, I believe the State Auditor's Office should not have been silent. I think that there were lessons to be learned immediately from the first phase and going into the second phase. And this is a health-related emergency, but more urgently, it's a financial emergency that's going to help the economy get back on its feet and help the people of Vermont. So I think making plans to actually audit and monitor the money that is coming into Vermont as part of the CARES Act, the federal government stimulus response, is crucial. And right now is the time. I mean, you have to look at that money before it actually starts hitting in full. You know, we need to send the message to the government that as this money comes in, the State Auditor's Office is going to be the watchdog and watch it carefully for fraud. You know, I cannot see as a true auditor letting, this type of flow of millions and billions of dollars go through government branches and not watch every single dollar to see who's going to try to grab it. I'm sure there's not going to be malicious intent, but when money comes in, everybody wants it. So I think we need to monitor this, from the onset. Every single taxpayer dollar needs to be reviewed. So I have grave concerns that the state auditor at this time has not come out and announced, hey, here's our plan, this is what we're doing. But I do understand that it is financial audits that, will be needed. So it's important. For me, I would say we have to actually have real-time audits of the governments that are actually handling the federal money. That's our office, our government offices. I think we also need to review the internal controls, the procedures that are put into place that are going to prevent the fraud. What do our government offices have in place there? What state agencies are actually handling this stimulus money? And what internal controls do they have in place? We need to make sure that the performance audits that are chosen will actually show if the stimulus money is being used to accomplish the desired outcome and the intent. And we also need to be training government employees on how to disperse the stimulus money. We're not in a position for trial and error right now. We need a public auditor, a government auditor, somebody who's going to come in there and say, I know how to do this, and here's our plans.
So there are a couple of state programs that over the years have drawn the attention of the current office holder, Doug Hoffer, or the attention of legislators along the way. And I guess I just thought maybe I'd ask you to comment on whether or not you think they're effective or if they should be managed differently. That over the years, I think, has been, let's say, discussed on occasion is that Vermont Employment Growth Incentive, or veggie program. That's where companies are rewarded or incentivized to, grow their business and hire more people. Has that program been managed correctly from your point of view?
So, of course, it's very easy to criticize somebody when you're looking at, the external reports. I believe that regarding that program, it would have been more effective to go in and say, how are the funds actually being used? How are the dollars passing through on the financials? Who's getting the dollars? Is it going through a fund? Who's controlling the monies that are going through veggie? How is the process being worked? The financial part, the disbursement of the monies, the collection of the monies is what needs to be looked at to see if there is any fraud, abuse, or waste going on. So that's another financial aspect that should be looked at versus the performance side, because anybody can find fault with performance, and the key is it really something that makes the program not work, or should we really be looking at the use of and source and use of the funds and how they're monitored? And that will tell us better if the actual structure is working. So I would look at that.
Another program that's come in for some scrutiny is the tax increment financing, or TIF districts. We had one in Bennington, actually, in connection with the project down there at the Putnam Square, and also one up, I believe it was in St. Albans, recently drew some concern that maybe the money wasn't quite flowing as properly as it should have. I guess in general, do you think TIF districts are a good idea, or is it just a matter of tweaking how they work?
So I think that there's two questions there. I think that, no,
Sorry about that.
that's good.
I do that all the time.
So I think, first of all, it's fair to say that the state auditor's office is now mandated to audit TIFs. So before, it's possible that there could have been a choice to audit a TIF district, but right now there is the mandate that was given by the legislature to say the state auditor must continually audit TIF districts. Regarding the use of TIFs, I believe that TIFs can actually bring a great benefit in the economic development of different distressed areas, or areas that even are not distressed, but can actually expand, having other businesses come in because of the specific TIF funding source and the project that is coming in. So I think that the idea that the communities actually need to do these public improvements and help blighted areas, I think that is a good idea. I don't think the audit of the but-for that is continually used right now is the way to go. And the but-for is determined at the local level. Once you pass that and the TIF has been approved and the project is in, you want to watch the financial impact. You want to see, is that project actually helping economic development? And I understand from what I've read with the current, incumbent, is that there's not much love for economic growth. I believe that Vermont can have it all. I think we can have economic growth. Development's important, and we can still keep the natural resources that we love. I think the whole balance there is something we should strive for. What that will do for us is it will spread across the state, and it will allow us to have people get jobs, which will increase housing. We're not putting up skyscrapers. So we're not, we need to watch the signage, we need to watch what we are doing. But I think the approach to the TIF audits is very important. And once again, it is a financial audit. And somebody needs to have the experience and skill set to do that, as well as, more importantly, the state auditor. The person who is elected as the state auditor needs to understand how to oversee and review the staff or people who are actually doing those audits. I think that when the TIF districts or the TIFs actually have support from the administration, they're more successful. So I think that's important. So it all depends on the stage and phase that you're coming in and the aspect. But these are financial audits. And, CPAs do financial auditing. And that's what you need. You need somebody who understands that, because you cannot oversee a financial audit if you yourself have not gone through the professional training and the licensing and experience. It's a very difficult area, and it takes years to get that license. And I believe that's something that's important for Vermont.
One of the other programs, if I heard correctly, last week or whenever it was, you had a Zoom discussion about your candidacy and some of the things you were hoping to achieve if elected. Was that you? And correct me if I didn't hear this clearly, but that you seem to have some concerns about the remote worker program that was launched a couple of years ago. The idea being to attract more residents to the state, folks who could work remotely, something we've heard a lot more about lately than we probably had 2 years ago, would get $10,000 or so to cover their moving expenses. has the execution of that program or the monitoring of it not been adequate in your view, or what was your concern about that?
So I didn't have a concern with the remote program itself. My concern was with the fact that that was a program that was chosen to be audited. Okay, for me, you know, the maximum that would have come out of that program, if it was highly successful, might have been $500,000. So why spend $200,000 to go in and audit a program that everybody knew was, you know, a chance for marketing to try to bring people into the state of Vermont? And, you know, it really was a bit gimmicky. Everybody knew there was a lot of ridicule about the program itself. However, you know, the auditor, she needs to maintain independence. So you don't select audits because there's so much propaganda about it. Everybody hates it because it came from the administration. That's not the reason you choose an audit. So $200,000 to spend on an audit that maybe is a $500,000 program, that's the spend. I don't think that balance is well worth it. And it did not make the program disappear. So now we have a higher spend on a remote program that people were skeptical about in the beginning.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that clarification. We have a couple of minutes left, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the state programs that you do feel merit some further monitoring or consideration or looking at, or perhaps conversely, ones that don't, as you're just saying there with the remote worker program. What are some areas, if you are successful in your campaign for this office, would be priorities for you to kind of explore right off the bat?
So I think right now, as I said, the pandemic is very important, and that's going to drive time on money watching. I think that the unfunded pension liability, what's going on there and what has been going on there for years and has not been looked at, is crucial. I mean, we definitely need to look at the pension situation. I believe that what's going on with the college situation right now is another area that irks me, that we've known about this for years. I mean, the state auditor is actually an ex officio on some of these boards and is required to be at these meetings. I'm not convinced that the auditor was actually at the meetings, you know, or all the required meetings, and would have known that there were going concern issues in the independent auditor reports, and why was this not looked at? So those are the areas that I think are important. Financial areas, areas that say, whoa, red flag, pay attention, how are the taxpayers' money being used? So I think we have a past look at what was not being done with financial audits. I think we have a present look of where the financial audits need to go, and definitely a future look.
Interesting. I just was wondering, is the state auditor, you know, sort of independent from the governor's cabinet? I mean, you'd be an elected on your own right if successful. So I suppose that gives you a certain independence from whatever the priorities of the administration might be.
So I believe that the audit should not be politicized, and that's been my concern throughout what I've looked at historically over how the audits are being chosen. I've seen audits being driven by more of the legislature and their ideas and what they're pushing, more so than from the administration. I think the administration needs to be looked at, I think, but so does the legislature. My concern right now is that the auditor needs to be independent. There should be no political push. I don't believe that politics, of course, it's always going to be politics, but that your party should have anything to do with an auditor. If you are a licensed auditor, you know you have to be independent. So you need to take that. Now, of course, it's not required to be licensed to be the state auditor, but it's far better to be because you're used to being independent. You know that by nature of doing audits and overseeing audits. So as far as auditing the administration, absolutely, they need to be looked at. Their programs need to be looked at. Their IT needs to be looked at, as well as what's going on in the legislature. So the auditor needs to be independent and not say, gee, this is an interesting idea that came out of the legislature. This is where one party is pushing. Don't go there. Look at what the taxpayers' money is really about and what the taxpayers need and want and how our money is being spent. And be realistic and don't let it be materially inaccurate.
All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it there, Representative Sullivan. I really appreciate your time being with us. It's going to be an interesting campaign, I imagine, somewhat different from what you probably anticipated doing back when you first decided to run a few months back.
Thank you so much, really, and stay safe, everybody. Thank you.
Again, the primary election will be held on August 11th, but absentee or mail-in voting will begin 45 days before that date, or roughly on June 28th. We'll also be trying to arrange a discussion with Mr. Hoffer, her Democrat primary opponent. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of GNAT-TV's in-depth series, and we'll see you again the next time. Meanwhile, stay safe.